Beetroots are one of my favourite vegetables to grow in the garden. They're probably up there with one of my top 3 favourites. They're really great for beginner gardeners and you can produce a really high yield for not a lot of work. So in today's video, I wanted to share some tips on how to grow beetroot, how to harvest it, and also some really simple, easy recipes on how I like to use it. But first, I need to go pick some beetroots, so let's go. In terms of a growing beetroot, they really like a nice sunny position in the garden, but they will also do well in part shade. They might just take a little longer to grow and to bulb up. But usually they will take around 55 to 70 days until harvest, which is pretty quick compared to a lot of other veggies in the garden. And one of my favorite things about beetroot is that pretty much as soon as it sprouts, it is edible. The greens on top of the root are all edible, and I use them as a spinach substitute. And you can just pick off a few leaves as they grow, or like I like to do when I'm sowing my beetroot seeds, I'll sow them fairly thickly, not really reading what's on the packet a lot of the time, but then as they grow and they start to get a little bit bigger, I'll actually thin them and use all of the greens in things like salads and stir fries. Because they are a root crop, they definitely need well draining soil. So before I sow the seeds, I like to give the area just a light fork to break up the soil a little bit. The soil doesn't need to be exactly fully dug over, but just forking the ground a little bit to be able to get a little bit more air into the soil is something that beetroots are really going to like, as well as a good amount of organic matter in the soil. And that's because you want that soil to be retaining as much moisture as you can. In terms of watering, beets can be a little tricky because they like to be in fairly moist soil, which is pretty consistent, rather than large amounts of water and then a long dry period. Firstly, the seeds won't germinate too well if you do that. And when your beets do grow a little bit, you have the risk of the tubers and the roots splitting or getting disease if they are too wet. So the way you can prevent that is by just making sure you have well-balanced soil, well prepped with organic matter to hold the water, but not so much that it kind of forms more clayey soil. That's not what beetroots really like. And if you do have that problem, then you can always add sand into your mixture, and that can really help to break up the soil and allow those roots and tubers to spread. Before I plant them, I usually fertilize with kind of like an all-purpose fertilizer, and then as they grow, every few weeks I will water them in with some compost tea or worm tea, just to make sure that they're getting all the nutrients that they can. Coming into the warmer months and kind of even during the middle of the day, they tend to look a little bit wilty and kind of a little bit horrible, which is perfectly fine. Sometimes I'll come just out here and give them a water. Right now they're kind of struggling a little bit after having full sun. It's been a pretty warm day today, but you just want to make sure that you're minimizing stress as much as possible. And if you do find that they're wilting a lot every day, then it might be a sign that you might need a little bit more shade around them, or they just need some more water. They take a while to bulb up, but trust me, they end up doing it. I'm really impatient sometimes, and I'll just be seeing kind of things that resemble spinach until they start to bulb up, which happens really quickly, and then you get beautiful, beautiful beets. The ones behind me are a Detroit dark red variety, I think, and they are my favorite because I just absolutely love the deep red color. It's one of my favorite colors, and I just love the taste of this variety. But I also have some golden beetroots growing as well that are quite small because I've been growing them in almost full shade just to see if they would do well, and they are starting to bulb up now. And there's some other really cool funky colors of beetroots out there too. The ones behind me have multiple different sizes because I like to pick them as they grow. So I'll usually be looking for the biggest ones and pick those ones, and then let all of the other little ones around bulb up and grow as well. Rather than thinning them a lot at the start, I find I much prefer this method of just kind of picking them as I need. But today I really need to get the rest out because I need to use this area for a lot of my other plants that I have. So let's pick all of these and I'll share with you what I'm going to do with them. So for this next part of the video, I really wanted to show you some ways that you can actually use beetroots. They're a really versatile vegetable and they can be used in lots of different recipes, savoury and sweet. The way I like to prepare them is just by giving them a really good scrub. Firstly, as they come out of the garden, and any of the water that I've kind of soaked them in or scrubbed, I always do like to put that back onto the garden just to save any nutrients that otherwise might be wasted down the sink. So today my lemongrass was lucky enough to get the leftover nutrients from these beetroots. And then today I am just going to be boiling a lot of these to be then using in multiple different recipes. This is probably my favourite way to prepare and cook beetroots just because it is so hands-off and I don't have to really worry about kind of sticking around. They take about 20 minutes to half an hour to fully cook depending on the size of the beetroot. So I cook it in a really large pot, and then as soon as they're done and you can kind of stick a fork through them, I put them into a bowl of iced water. This makes them stop cooking and start to cool down, and this allows you to just peel off the skin of the beetroot. You can do the exact same method if you are baking the beetroots as well. Putting them in a bowl of iced water is a really good way to then just take all of these skins off, which are going to go straight to my worm farm after this. Alright, the first recipe I wanted to share with you is how to make the easiest beetroot hummus. This is an absolute favourite when I bring it to gatherings or picnics. It's such a pretty colour and tastes delicious. And all you need for it is a can of chickpeas. This was about 420 grams. About 3 small beetroots, 3 to 4, depending on the kind of flavour that you're going for. I went for about 4 small beetroots. I like to put lemon to taste, but I probably put about 2 tablespoons in here, and also about 2 tablespoons of tahini as well. And that is one of my favourite ingredients of this dip. I also like to add some garlic to taste. I used about 1.5 teaspoons, and salt to taste as well. I probably used about 1 teaspoon here. And then all you need to do is just blitz it up and just add different flavors in according to your preferences, whether you like it more or less salty. It is totally up to you. And it is such a vibrant, beautiful colour that I like to just eat plain on crackers or in Buddha bowls or however you would otherwise eat hummus. Alright, the next way that, and this is probably my favourite way I like to use beetroots, is on my caramelised onion and beetroot tart. Now this is a really rustic recipe. Most of my style of cooking is not following recipes at all. I just kind of put together what tastes good. But for this, I used about a third of a cup of walnuts to start. And this is going to be one of our toppings, but I like to cook this first just in the pan that I'm going to be cooking the onions in as well. And I like to just really lightly toast those so they get nice and crunchy and have a really beautiful texture to them for the top of the tart. And then I'm going to be chopping up 3 onions. So this makes enough for 2 different tarts. And then I'm going to be placing all of those onions into some olive oil. I prefer to just cut the onions lengthways so that it just doesn't turn to mush basically. You want to have this on a really low heat, and this is the key to doing caramelized onions well. By cooking them slowly and not letting them burn or brown too much, you really want them to slowly soften and have a more golden color rather than a brown color. And once they start to soften after about 5 to 10 minutes, I like to add in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and a nice drizzle of balsamic vinegar. And this starts the caramelization process. You'll start to see everything kind of come together, become a little bit more sticky, and it's going to make your house smell delicious. I absolutely love caramelized onions. They are one of my favorite things to add to dishes for extra flavor. So you want to let this cook for another 5 to 10 minutes until they're all nice and soft and you can start to see those little bubbles forming of all of that caramel around the onions. And then you want to let it cool. So while I let it cool, I'm just going to be chopping up some beetroots. Again, I'm using about 4 medium-sized beetroots here and not really chopping them too fine, just into larger chunks. Then I'm going to be putting really lightly a layer of those caramelized onions onto just a ready-made puff pastry sheet and spreading them out and then putting the beetroot on top of them. It is such a simple tart to make, but these flavors just go so well together. To bring the tart together, all I do is kind of just fold over each of the corners and keep folding over the pastry as I go around until it is a round shape, but you can really do this however you want. This is just my preference to kind of keep it all intact. And then you want to bake it in an oven at 220 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes or so, just keeping an eye on it. And then you can top it with your walnuts. I like to just have it really simple like this, or sometimes I will also add some feta cheese on top. You can use plant-based feta. Goat's cheese goes really well with this if you eat goat's cheese. Any one of those combinations goes amazing with these flavors. And just some of the other ways that I really like to use beetroot, I love to eat it raw in salads where I will just kind of grate it up like I do carrot. You don't even need a dressing if you're going to eat a salad like this, just because the beetroot has so much beautiful flavor. So I would definitely recommend trying it raw if you haven't already tried that. Another way, I actually like to put it into some muffins that I make. I have made these chocolate muffins before, and I will put the link in the description for this recipe. It does taste a little beetrooty, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't really mind. It ends up looking like a red velvet cupcake, and the beetroot flavor is quite subtle, so if you're looking for a way to use extra beetroot, maybe adding it into a chocolate dish is a way to go. I have had success with these muffins and yeah, everyone seemed to love them. You don't even have to tell people, you can just tell them that it's a chocolate cupcake and you can add whatever icing you like on top as well. And like I also mentioned with the greens of the beetroot, you can eat these fresh and add them into salads or curries or stir fries. I also like to dry the leaves, which I just dry them on a low heat in the oven for a few hours, and then I just blitz it all up, and I end up using this in smoothies when I don't have fresh greens around, just to add a little bit more nutrients. Beetroot is such an amazing vegetable, has so many different health benefits, really high in folate and so many other different vitamins. And I love incorporating it into our diet and our meals. So I really hope you enjoyed this video all about one of my favorite vegetables. Let me know if you try out any of these recipes or how you like to use beetroot, and definitely give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for lots more garden content. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, happy gardening everyone. Bye!